show, and this right here is the icing on the cake. When it comes to the protests and everything that's going on around George Floyd, well, what more can you say than when you find out after the autopsy is done, on top of everything else, of course, if you believe in what the news is telling you, he also tested positive for C-19.
So look at George Floyd's autopsy from the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office. His family gave permission for its release.
The report shows that at the time of his death, Floyd had tested positive for COVID-19. Mary Bear is joining us now with more on what this autopsy reveals. Mary?
Well, Joy and Kent, the autopsy report shows Floyd that died of cardiopulmonary arrest. 4 officers detained George Floyd on May 25th after a 911 call from a nearby store said he had used counterfeit money to pay for cigarettes. As 46-year-old Floyd was restrained, video captured Officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for more than 8 minutes. Floyd struggled, saying he couldn't breathe, and then called for his mother before he became unresponsive. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office concluded that Floyd appeared asymptomatic, although he tested positive for COVID-19.
I kid you not. Doesn't that fit in perfectly with this whole narrative? I mean, we almost forgot about the C-19, right? Well, I haven't. At least the supposed C-19, because I'm keeping a close eye on the laws and regulations and restrictions they're going to continue to pass on us and steal from us, the rights they're going to take away, and of course the vax that is going to come, so we all have to keep an eye on it. But just to throw icing on the cake, they decided in the releasing of the autopsy to let us know that he tested positive for C-19. Now, the question is, what goes on his death certificate? Do we count this? Because remember the whole I can't breathe movement, right? That is part of the movement that we're seeing now that's blowing up out of control for the most part, right? Riots and protests, which aren't paid for in every state around the country. Well, just don't forget, one of the side effects, supposedly, of the C-19 is shortness of breath, respiratory issues. So I don't know what they're going to put on the certificate. Homicide, or maybe it was just from C-19. I remember earlier when I was reading to you about what the CDC was saying in regards to how the death certificates were going, that literally somebody was hit with a bus and came to the hospital and still were alive and then passed away. And they found out that they had the symptoms of C-19 to just put it on their certificate as C-19, right? And don't forget, in addition to all that, with the protests going on, obviously we all are aware of what this is. I've been talking about it for years. I've been saying to keep an eye on it coming up again, because these agendas that they've put in place aren't just going to go away. And now this is the big agenda going on. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, is this, and everybody's dropped the C-19. And this is how the Freemasons work, right? They work hand in hand. Now, Steven Jackson, the basketball player, has obviously become a face of the movement, calling this guy his twin, that he knew him growing up. And obviously they look extremely similar to one another, almost like they are twins. And I'm sure most of you have seen posts on his Instagram account showing that his father was a 33rd degree Freemason. And he said he was going to follow in his footsteps and make him proud in Instagram posts. The photo, of course, that came out of George Floyd with his shirt off, where you can see the 33rd degree Freemason, the Order Out of Chaos symbol on his chest. And for those who say, well, it's a little blurry and hard to see, you can even see them on the sword, which really is the dead giveaway to show you what this tattoo is. But these are all coincidences, right? And then, as all this stuff continues to happen, what's the next story that slowly leaks out? 20,000 new cases reported of the C-19, one of the highest outbreaks or highest day totals across the country. And they're blaming it on what? The protests, right? Another way for them to continue to strip away our rights, to tell us that we need more regulations, that people aren't social distancing because of the protests, they're being irresponsible. And they can continue along with this and say, look, if you want to go out and protest and do this stuff, just make sure you get your shot first. And like I showed you recently, This is going to be an annual thing. Don't forget, an annual thing. But I don't want to get off topic here because this video is just about the fact that it's so convenient, isn't it? That after the autopsy comes out, that we find out that this guy tested positive for C-19. I mean, how many red flags do you need to realize that these are all psychological operations? They're like, yeah, you know what? Let's just throw it in there, right? Why was he even being tested for it in the first place in the autopsy? Right? We're told that they don't even know how to test people properly anyway. But they were like, hey, you know, we have this huge uprising going on with what happened with George here. We're going to take his autopsy, even though we know that he died from suffocation, supposedly, you know, with the knee on the throat. But test him for C-19 while we're at it, okay? Sure thing. And then coincidentally, it comes back that he was positive for it. You can't make it up. You really can't. So that the story, while he's the center of attention, right, around the world this week, and it continues on, right, with all the protests and riots, that they could also tie in the C-19 to make sure, hey, don't forget that this is still out there, and we're going to use it still while people are protesting and rioting to say that you're not social distancing. And now phase 2 has begun, and here comes this huge outbreak that we thought was going to come in the fall, but it's going to come in the summer, right? And don't forget, they're doing experimental testing on 30,000 human beings starting July 1st. Maybe you'll be one of the lucky ones chosen for the lottery to have chemicals put into your body that, hey, if they kill you, you went down as a hero, right? And speaking of which, I mean, this whole marketing campaign around the C-19, which I've covered with the repetition and the whole, just the commercials, right? The together as one, right? They're even mixing that in to this whole George Floyd thing. Look at these shirts that they're selling and that people are wearing. It's a little bit frightening because I guess that means they want someone like me killed, but it says, love for all who have love for all. That's the new saying. So love for all who have love for all. So in other words, love everyone who's tolerant of everything. Otherwise, they're an enemy, right? So it means I have to accept the LGBT. I have to believe in this movement that they've created and socially engineered, or we're hateful, you know, bigots, and we don't understand it. I mean, I even was reading stories yesterday. They interview a football player, Drew Brees, and they ask him about the American flag, and he says something along the lines of, I don't think anyone should ever disrespect the flag, and then, oh, now suddenly he's a racist, right? And I'm like, does anyone see how they're just engineering this? Not only is this going to lead to taking away more and more of our speech, right? Because, I mean, what's going to be deemed not hate? That's hate speech now, too? That makes the guy a racist when he plays a sport where it's dominated by black athletes anyway? White and black athletes, but I mean their teammates. I mean, this stuff is so ridiculous. And people still don't believe social engineering is a real thing. I mean, you could drive by your grocery store. I'm not even kidding you. I'm sure some of you have seen it. I drove by like a Family Dollar. And I'm like, what is that? I see signs, and the signs say, heroes work here. What? Heroes work at the Family Dollar now? Heroes are bagging my groceries at the grocery store? I mean, look, as far as I'm concerned, there's only been one hero that's ever walked the face of the earth, and that's Jesus Christ. And no one else is a hero. No one else is ever going to be a hero. But just this mindset, I mean, it's so ridiculous, this love movement, right? Love, love, love. And they're saying that these protests and these riots are really about love, right? About change and about love. And like I say a million times over, that's about the acceptance of the Antichrist. The person who's coming in the name of peace, change, and love. And anyone who's against that is going to be the new criminal number one in this country. You're going to be the new person who is, should be locked up because you're a problem, because you're not tolerant with men cross-dressing. That's how insane this has gotten. So all of this stuff is out there. I just wanted to do a video and rant because he was tested positive, apparently, because we needed to make sure we knew in the autopsy, of course, That was really important to check that out. And he has, of course. And it'll be interesting to see what's on the death certificate. Of course, they're not going to say that they're putting that on there because I think people would be a little bit upset because it wouldn't fit in with the narrative right now. But you have the Freemason connections, of course. There's not a ton of stuff to find on this guy as far, because I feel like it's a false alias. It's not even a real name that they're using. So, I've gone through the Houston Freemasonry registry and the Prince Halls in Minnesota, because he originally is from Houston, so it's likely that he, went through the ranks there and was a member there before relocating. They claim to Minnesota. They might have just placed him there, to go through with this entire ritual, which obviously is creating something that is so socially engineered. It's not even, it's beyond words at this point. It really is. And if you're not for the movement, you're a hateful, horrible person. And someone like me, for it or against it, it's just an engineering movement. That's what it's about. They don't care about black people or white people, as long as they keep us divided. They don't want us looking at them. They don't want us to look up at the Rothschild mansion up there, those castles that they've got and what they're really doing underground. People only knew the stuff they were doing with kids. You think they'd actually care about this type of stuff? This lives matters? Yeah, how about kids' lives too? They matter. You can't even say stuff like that. That's hate speech too. I've seen videos online of people who are saying all lives matter, and they're like, no, not until black lives matter. It's like, what are you even arguing about? This is what they've done to you. This is what the government has done to you. You lab rats. Wake up and smell the roses here. Or not even the roses. Wake up and smell the diarrhea, because that's really what this world smells like right now. These dumb people who believe in the engineering, who follow an order, do what they're told, and then they think stuff like this. They're like, we're going to create change. LeBron James is going to create change. Like, what? These idols, these false idols who pop up and give PR statements so that they could engineer their audience and their fan base, and nobody realizes that's what's being done to them. They pay these guys to go protest and be on the front lines, the Masons. You have cops undercover as protesters. This ignites and engineers the regular people who see it to want to get involved, so they do monkey see, monkey do, and that's how the whole thing works, right? Unbelievable. I want to thank everyone for listening to today's show. A reminder, check out my website at callfornuprising.com. $2.99 a month. Share your information over there. Anything you find on this, with Floyd, different aliases, photographs, showing him wearing the Masonic garb, other than the tattoo on the chest. Post that kind of stuff over there. A lot of people have shared good stuff, so I appreciate that. Check it out if you haven't. You can always unsubscribe if you don't end up liking it. But I want to thank everyone out there, the Patrons, and those of you who thumbs up the videos and watch. I appreciate it. God bless all of you and your families.